Hi Algebra 2 students. This video is on the law of cosines, and specifically we're going to be going over the process of solving a triangle using the law of cosines. So what we did in class was just finding a specific part of a triangle using law of cosines. Now we're going to actually solve the entire thing and find all of the missing parts. So the information I have right here at the top, this is the law of cosines in two different forms, right? So there's three different formulas, and we have each formula in two forms. The form on the left here you'll use when you're trying to find a side, because the A, B, or C, little a, B, and C are the sides, so they have the little a, B, and C solved for, almost. And then here, this is the formulas that you would use to find the angles, because here you have mostly the angles solved for. So that once you get a value in this formula, you just would do inverse cosine of that value to find the angle. So we're going to do two examples. We're going to do one example that is SAS, meaning you have two sides and the angle in between them. So that's the first example. And then the second example would be the SSS case, where I give you three sides and you have to find all three angles. Okay, so the first step here is we are going to find the missing side. So when you are doing a law of cosines problem that is SAS, your first step will always be to find the last side. So I'm actually going to write this in a different color. Our step one is to find the missing side. And in our case, that's going to be side C, right? So if I'm trying to find the side C, I want to use this formula that has C squared in it. So I'm going to set up C squared is equal to, let me just actually add to this by saying using law of cosines. I don't know if that's obvious, but okay. So when I plug in here, I'm just going to zoom in a little so we can see a little better. I'm plugging in a squared, which is 8 squared, plus b squared, which is 11 squared, minus 2 times a, 8, times b, 11, times cosine of c, which is 37. So the one thing to make sure is that you're plugging in the values correctly here, because you can make a small mistake and mess up your answer. At this point, we can start simplifying the right-hand side. You could plug this whole thing into the calculator at once, or you could just kind of take it step by step and do 8 squared is 64, plus 11 squared is 121, 2 times 8 is 16, or actually I'll do 8 times 11 is 88, 88 times 2 is 176, so then I would get 176 cosine of 37, and maybe this is a good point at which I'm going to rely on my calculator. Oops. So it's kind of hard for you to see, so maybe I'll do this. So if I do 64 plus 121 minus 176 times cosine of 37, it's going to spit out a value for us, which is 44.44. So now I know c squared is equal to 44.44. At that point, I would still need to square root my answer, and when I square root that answer in the calculator, I get c is approximately equal to 6.67. So we've found our c value, but we're not done, because we still need to find the other two angles. So now we have all three sides, and we're missing two angles. So our next step is going to be to find one of the angles. Okay, so we'll say step 2. And actually, at this point, we now have an angle on the side opposite it. So we're going to revert back to using law of sines here, because it's actually easier to use law of sines. It's an easier formula to remember. So we're going to find angle B using the law of sines. You could also use the law of cosines, but I think it's a little bit easier to set up the law of sines than it is the law of cosines, because there's less things to plug in for. So if I'm using the law of sines now to find angle B, well, I know one of them should be sine of B over little b, which is 11, is equal to, I would have to use C as my other proportion because I don't have angle A yet, so I can't set that proportion up. So I would do sine of 37 over the value I just got for C, which is 6.67. And at this point, if I'm trying to solve for B, I would multiply both sides by 11 to cancel. I get sine of B is equal to 11 sine 37 over 6.67. That's something to plug into the calculator and get a decimal value for. And when you do that, I got 0.992. And remember, like, at that point, you do inverse sine. You do sine inverse of that 0.992, but I'd rather you don't round. I'm rounding here on paper, but on your calculator, you can pull down your answer from the previous line, and that should give us our B value. So here, when I do inverse sine, I get 82.97. So I'm going to say angle B is approximately 83, just by rounding. So now, if we think about what we have and what we still need to find, the only thing we have not yet found is angle A. And this last step will be the easiest. So we're going to find angle A by subtracting from 180, right? As soon as you know two angles of a triangle, you can get the third. Let me slide this up so you can see. So find angle A by subtracting from 180. What are we subtracting from 180? The other two angles. So I would do 180 minus angle C minus angle B. In this case, it would be 180 minus angle C is what we were given, 37, minus angle B is what we just found, 83. And when you do that, you should get 60 degrees. So now we know angle C is approximately, I don't know why I put that circle, 60 degrees. And now we have completed this triangle. We have solved all missing parts. Okay, so we're going to do a second example. This time it's going to be side, side, side. So here's my example 2. I'm giving you all the little letters, which is side, side, side. So our process looks a little different now that we're trying to find an angle instead of a side to start, okay? So now our first step would be we need to find any one of these angles. It doesn't matter which angle we start by finding, but we're going to say step 1, find any angle using the law of sines. Sorry, law of cosines, my bad. Because here we don't, in order to use law of sines, we need at least one angle to start. So since we only have sides, we're using the law of cosines. And the formula I want to plug into, I'm just going to kind of show you them again. Since we're finding an angle now, we need to use one of the ones from this side. And it doesn't matter which one, so I'm just going to pick, let's start with angle A. So let's find angle A, and we're going to plug into this formula. So doing that, I would do cosine of A is equal to B squared plus C squared. So that will be 5 squared plus 8 squared minus 9 squared divided by 2BC. So that's 2 times 5 times 8. Once again, you just want to be very careful when you're plugging in that you plugged in the right numbers in the right spots. Okay, so now I'm going to put this away, simplify this. So I get 25 plus 64 minus 81. This ends up being, if you have a calculator, it ends up being 8. And then on the bottom, we end up getting 10 times 8, so that's 80, that's 1/10 or 0.1. So now, in order to find angle A, it's going to be cosine inverse. Let me just do this. It would be cosine inverse of 0.1, and if you put that in your calculator, you get approximately, I got like 84.2, or you could just say it's approximately 84 degrees. And that is, so angle A is approximately 84. So now that I've found one of the angles, I have an angle and the side opposite. So to find the next angle, I'm going to use law of sines because that's a little bit easier to set up for me. So now, and again, like you could use law of cosines at this step if you really like law of cosines. It's up to you. So we're going to say find the next angle. It doesn't matter which one we go to next. The next angle using law of sines. So I'm going to have to use the A value that I got here. So I know it's got to be sine A over A, which would be sine 84 over 9 is equal to, might as well find B next, sine B over 5. So then to get sine of B by itself, I would multiply both sides by 5. So sine B equals 5 sine 84 over 9. Now this is what I'm putting into the calculator to find, and then taking inverse sine of that to get B. So just a demo. If I do 5 sine 84 divided by 9, I get 0.552 whatever. Now I'm going to do inverse sine of my answer, and it gives me 33.5. So I'm going to round that. It's not the best thing to round, but we've been rounding to the whole number degrees. So we'll say that's 34 degrees. So we'll say B is approximately 34 degrees. And now I am very close to being done. I started with all 3 sides, remember? So then I found the first angle. I found the second angle. So we're going to find the last angle, and it's going to be easy because we can just subtract from 180. So find the last angle by subtracting from 180 degrees. So I'm doing 180 minus 84 minus 34. And I get 62. So now we know angle C is approximately 62. And I'm saying approximately, I didn't round here, but I was rounding along the way. So then this is also ends up being approximate. Okay, so now I've shown you how to solve both types of triangles, either SAS or SSS, and you can do the best that you can on problems 1 and 2 on the homework.